This program is made possible in part by Cerisi Conlon LLP, protecting the future and using the law as a force for good in both the courtroom and our communities. Online at cerisiconlon.com.
Hello and welcome. Pleased you could join me tonight. We have a great show. With me is one of our Minnesota leaders joining the series that I've been doing for years. Melvin Whitfield Carter is with me. As most of you know, he is the mayor of St. Paul in his second term, first elected in 2017 and started his job in 2018, of course. You also may know him as a St. Paul City Councilman from 2008 to 2013.
That's right.
He also had all kinds of other nonprofit jobs that sounded really interesting. The children's
The Minnesota Children's Cabinet.
cabinet, yes.
Yeah.
But we want to talk today about his life, his thoughts about some of the hot issues right now, about leadership, and not so much about your past work. But you are right now the first African-American mayor of St. Paul.
That's correct.
And I was thinking about Obama, President Obama, was often asked and probably got tired of answering, like you may too, be, but do you feel a special responsibility that weighs on you because of that aspect of your mayorship?
You know, it's an incredible question. I feel a special privilege, I think. I'm a fifth generation St. Paulite. And I think back to my great-grandparents here in St. Paul, having a son who they named Melvin Carter, because I'm Melvin III, back in 1923. And the notion that Melvin Carter would one day be mayor of this city was probably pretty far from their imagination at that point in time. So it feels like a special privilege. And I'll tell you, I do think that I have a life experience and a set of perspectives that's probably unique in my term in the office, and it gives us an opportunity to pursue different types of solutions than our city has ever had access to before. So we're having a lot of fun.
Yes, you look like you're having fun when I see you on television or photos in the papers. But it's also a hard job.
That's true.
I mean, as I think about our time right now in our state and country, it's such a divisive time. And are you running into a lot of partisanship that weighs on you in terms of that aspect of the job?
Quite a bit. It's been, and everybody knows, it's been a really challenging last several years.
Yeah.
You know, we just didn't know the world would do all the things that it's done since the time when I ran for mayor back in 2017. And so between a global pandemic, between the murder of George Floyd right next door, between sort of all of the factors that we've and the dynamics we've navigated over these past several years, it's been really challenging.
You probably stepped into one of the historically hardest times to lead.
It's quite possible. I bumped into former Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Ryback one day, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you never told me being mayor was this hard." And he just started laughing. He said, "It wasn't," and just started laughing. But I'll tell you, what's really incredible is the people who I get a chance to work with, whether it's our city employees, our police officers, our firefighters, the folks who work in our rec centers and our libraries, or just the neighbors and business owners who I bump into all day, every day. The one thing that has really made this job continue to be fun and rewarding, even through some of the hardest challenges we could possibly imagine, is the fact that we never feel alone.
That would be very comforting and kind of like you've got a team behind you.
Yeah, it really is. And again, my staff, my cabinet is one of the most amazing kind of crews of people I've ever seen operate. But the team really is the people in the city. Our value proposition to the city is that every decision is made to benefit the decision maker. And so if we want public policy and public investments to benefit a broader set of people, then we just by definition have to expand the set of decision makers. And it's really exciting, from helping us name our cabinet members, to helping us draft the city budget we bring to the city council every year, to really every major piece of policy that we've brought to the city council. Our community has taken us up on that.
We are taping this interview on April 17th, 2023. And I mention that because I know you've got a budget meeting coming up soon, but some of this will be past tense when you hear the interview or see the interview. Your folks both were in what I would call service-oriented work. Your mother, Tony Carter, was a Ramsey County Commissioner. Your father was a police officer in St. Paul, right?
Yes.
Do you think they kind of expected you to go into something similar in terms of service?
I don't know. My mother always said, "Go make money, go do something and make a lot of money, and then think about service later." But the example they showed us was all about service.
Yeah, I'm thinking
it's really incredible in retrospect as I think about the times when it'd be raining outside or hailing, or there'd be some severe thunderstorm warning, and people who were houseless in our community would come and knock on our door and ask to wait out the storm in our garage or wait out the storm in our living room, and they were always willing to do that. The number of young people in our community who look at my parents and say, "Yeah, I know that's your dad, but that's my dad too. I know that's your mom, but that's my mom too." And both of them founded nonprofit organizations and communities. So the example that they set probably, sort of required my sisters and I to go into some type of public serving type of roles, just because it's what we saw.
Sort of, right?
Well, it's what we saw. It's the example we saw every day.
In high school, I read you were kind of a math whiz in the Talented Youth Math Program, and
I don't know that I'd say a whiz. I loved math. I really enjoyed math. I always felt like I could put my hands around it.
Did you switch in college? You went into business administration. Did you switch knowing that might be something that would propel your career, or what caused the leaving math behind?
Well, I don't know that I ever left math behind. The truth is, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so they said, you're 18 years old, and somebody says, choose your track for the rest of your life. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I had seen a lot of really smart people, a lot of really capable people, a lot of committed folks who had really good ideas and heavy passion around the world, not be able to kind of fulfill that, put that thing that they have in the world for lack of some accounting skills or for lack of some, just getting the business done. So it felt like something that was both useful and something where I could sort of, and it was general enough that I could sort of delay the decision what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Well, and that's a healthy, mature kind of approach,
I don't
really.
know.
I mean, how do we know at 18, really?
I still don't know.
Well, I was asking your press secretary, Kamal, if you had long-term goals to go to Washington.
Oh.
So, I mean, in terms of what you want to do, does that figure in?
I'll tell you this. I got involved in politics. I went to Florida A&M University. Was never really a huge kind of political type. I never was the student government type or all those types of things.
Active that way in.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, my first presidential election I got to vote in was election 2000. So I was living in Florida. If you remember hanging chads and all, election 2000.
Right.
I was living in Florida in the capital city, going to school at one of the largest historically black colleges in the country. And I remember thinking during election 2000, I'll probably vote after class if I have time. That was a pretty important election.
Right.
I was living with my older sister and her husband and their 2-year-old daughter at the time. And my brother-in-law looks at me and says, "Hey, everybody living here is going to vote today." You
better be at the polls.
Right. So I got in the car and we go, show up to vote. And my sister and I voted, and my brother-in-law got turned away from the polls. and we found ourselves at the center of this, global news story of the people who got turned away from the polls in Florida, and all the ways that election happened in Florida, and it was the centerpiece of this thing. And we're standing there at this polling place arguing his right to vote.
Oh gosh!
And for somebody who grew up the son of a police officer and a teacher in St. Paul, it was this really crazy experience.
How could this be happening to me?
It was insane. And one of the things that I realized later was it was probably the most profound feeling of powerlessness I'd ever had. And then as you think about the sort of American creed, that the secret sauce that makes America what it is that if you want to say, you get a say.
Right.
And that's, there's cynical folks and there's apathetic folks and people who don't show up. But if you want to say, you get a say. I just couldn't reconcile it with the hundreds of my classmates who got turned away from the polls that day. I say all that just to say that my long-term plan is to really try to do everything I can to help people in our community never have to feel that sense of powerlessness that we felt. I'm absolutely in love with local government and municipal government. I always tell folks that municipal government is where the stuff that proves too hard for Washington, D.C., the stuff that proves too hard for the state capitol, it all lands at City Hall, because we still got to figure our way through gun violence. We still got to figure our way through people who are homeless. We still have to figure our way through people who don't have health care and have to be taken care of. We show up and take care of them in our ambulances, our police cars, our fire trucks, et cetera.
You're on the front line, aren't you?
We're on the front line, and I really enjoy that.
Well, I can tell your enthusiasm is contagious. You went after Florida A&M, came back home here to Minnesota and went to Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Did you do that, I'm guessing, pretty deliberately in terms of wanting to get more into policy work at some point?
Yeah, it was a strange crossroad in my life because I had the car packed to go move to California and go. I ran track, and so I sort of had the car packed to go move to California and go run with a kind of post-collegiate team out there. And the University of Minnesota, the Humphrey School, invited me to come and study there. I had done an internship at the city of St. Paul in the Department of Planning and Economic Development, and I spent the summer just understanding how city, projects worked and how the city invests in local neighborhood communities, and helping to advance grant applications to help build small playgrounds and things like that around the city, and just really fell in love with the type of work we do at City Hall. So that's what made me decide to go to the Humphrey School and learn a little bit about public policy.
You're 44 now, but looking back, I mean, that was a turning point, wasn't it, in your 44 years?
It really was.
Internship.
It really was. And the toolkit that I got there, it's a fantastic school. The toolkit that I got there at the Humphrey School, yes, around thinking through policy and how to analyze policy and how to look past sort of the first perception. And understand that every policy that we create has, its intended and unintended consequences, and how you model those things and think kind of through deeply. That's what we're trying to implement with regard to our economic strategies, with regard to our public safety strategies, with regard to sort of pushing past the place that we've all been comfortable forever, because we're comfortable with the processes, but we're never comfortable with the outcomes that we've gotten. So, I use that toolkit every day.
That's great. In terms of policy and issues, you've got a lot on your shoulders. Which issue kind of, Melvin, keeps you awake at night sometimes?
Well, we've got really, I think the two things I spend most time on right now is potholes and public safety. Potholes don't necessarily keep me up that late just because it's an obvious answer. We have to invest far more. We've just never invested enough in our streets and our infrastructure in St. Paul and Minnesota and the country, and our infrastructure is failing us. Our streets, when we reconstruct a street, we expect it to last about 60 years.
How many years?
60 years.
60, okay.
I inherited our arterial and our busy streets on a 124-year replacement cycle. And it's just not working. They're falling apart around us. We just are going to have to invest significantly more. We're having a conversation around the Capitol and around our community about how we do that now. Public safety is really the biggest thing for us, because that's, we have to bring a set of solutions that no one's ever kind of crafted before. And so we're working to field what we call the most comprehensive, most coordinated, most data-driven approach to public safety that our city has ever endeavored, which includes making sure that our police officers have the funding that they need to enforce the law and hold people accountable and to do the intervention kind of on the street, but also has to include a whole lot of other things as well, because I think what's gone wrong with public safety in America is this promise. When we say public safety, we always think police, we think prosecutors, we think prisons. Well, all of that happens after a crime has been committed.
Right.
That's not safety. That's
Right.
emergency response, and it's important. But safety has to be about making proactive investments.
Prevention.
That's right, to prevent us from having to call 911 in the first place. And that's the road that we're trying to pave.
I know St. Paul's got a higher number of murders right now than you've had in the past.
You know, it ends up going on a cycle. When I was in high school in the 90s, you know, we had, saw, homicides spike all over the country, and the Twin Cities included. We saw those come kind of way down, and in the kind of post-COVID world, we've seen those go back up. Even there, that's about making sure that we understand the data where those things are concerned, understand what the ratio is of group-involved violence versus domestic-involved violence, and really getting into all of the kind of data so that we can intervene. Our police chief, Axel Henry, is really, really good at that. He's somebody I'm really excited about working with.
And he's only been on the job how many months now?
Since this fall.
Yeah, not long. But you feel the two of you are clicking?
Yeah, without a doubt. He's a St. Paul guy, grew up in this community. We graduated from the same high school. He's somebody who knows the city well, knows the department well. And I think even more than that, one of the things that really sealed the deal for me in my mind is, as I look at some of the areas where our St. Paul Police Department has just sort of gone into warp speed and evolved into a new space to help keep our community safe. I think about, it's called the Blueprint for Safety, how St. Paul devised what's now a globally known model for helping to intervene and help prevent domestic violence from escalating. And he was kind of one of our leaders in our St. Paul Police Department where that's concerned. When St. Paul was implementing body cams around the city, he was one of our leaders in the city where that was concerned. And where his both ability to say, we're not just going to be the really great police department we were yesterday, but we're going to move to the future. And his ability to collect, understand, and leverage data in those processes is something I'm really excited about.
I live in South Minneapolis, and I think most neighbors that I have and most people that I talk to from around the metro area are feeling a lack of safety more than I've ever experienced. And I know it's a problem that's so complicated, but is there anything you can say to citizens in terms of dealing with that fear and being safer in terms of what they do personally?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the work that we're endeavoring. Like I said, we've been told forever that if we just build bigger prisons, if we just hire more police officers, if we just hire tougher prosecutors, that we'll be safer. And every time we feel less safe in America, we double down on that logic. Well, we ought to do more of all of the same stuff we've always done. And it hasn't worked. I don't know anybody who would argue that that's been the solution for us, because we don't feel safe. I will tell you, as a young person growing up, I was, I think, in junior high school the first time a peer of mine was murdered. I was in, I think, high school one morning where I woke up and wondered what that hole was in the wall above my bed. And I can go back another generation and tell you about the two cousins / closest friends of my father's who were murdered in a double homicide in St. Paul when my dad was 25. And so I think one of the first things we have to understand is these challenges have plagued our communities for a very long time. They've been cycles that our communities have been stuck in for a very long time. And that's why, when the conversation goes, there are folks who would argue that we shouldn't change the way we approach public safety. We should do it the same way we've always done it.
So you're saying we need to shift.
The only logical model, the only logical approach is to evolve our approach. I'll tell you, for example, we all know, we always say our police can't do it alone. Our police can't solve all of our problems alone. But then
Nor
we leave
can-
our police to solve all of our problems alone.
Nor can the school system.
Nor can the school system.
I mean, they're being asked right now to do more than they should be.
And this is where in St. Paul we've expanded our approach to make sure that when somebody calls 911 or somebody reaches out to contact us because somebody's experiencing a mental or chemical health crisis, that we have specialists who can come and meet the need. We have EMTs, we have folks, community specialists who can do that. When somebody's experiencing homelessness, we have specialists who can come and engage that need. What it helps us do at the same time is, one, break the cycles, because a lot of the challenges that people face in community, frankly, handcuffs can't solve, can't really address very well. Mm-hmm. So it helps us bring a level of resource that can actually interrupt the cycles that are challenging us. But it also helps us leave our police officers available to address the more acute and more serious crimes that we have in our community. And we think this whole kind of framework working together has got to be the answer for the future.
Well, I wish we had more time. We're tight on time here. What are you proudest about in terms of your work to date? Just into your second term, but...
I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to give you a multi-hyphenated answer. We in St. Paul have, I think we've learned that we've inherited what I think of as kind of a broken model of city building that always leads us to bet against our own residents. It leads us, when we think about public safety, to just lock up as many people as we can. When we think about economic development, it leads us to go find folks outside of our community, et cetera. So we're betting on our community. We've launched college savings accounts to start every child in our city with $50 in college savings.
But how many got to do that? Not everybody.
Every single child born in our city, we start with $50 in a college savings account.
I didn't know it was everybody.
That's right. We've now put over $1 million into college savings for our children. We're excited about that. We've piloted guaranteed income. We're helping people access housing and things like that. So I'm proud of the pace that we're establishing. I'm proud of the ability, people talk about the slow pace of government, and we're pushing the envelope on how City Hall can be relevant in people's lives. I'm proudest, though, because we wouldn't be able to do any of those things, those creative outside of the box things, if our community didn't come along with us. So I always tell folks, as proud as I am of the what's, I'm even most proud of the how we're doing the work.
That's interesting. Besides being a very busy man, you're a busy dad.
I am.
And how many kids do you have, Mel?
We've got a full Brady bunch. So we've got a blended family,
you do?
Total of 6, yes.
Wow. And what are their ages?
Oh, they range. We've got 2 out of the house, 3 teenagers, and a 3-year-old, if you can believe that. It's quite the spread.
Oh, there's quite a range there in terms of issues that you're dealing with as a parent.
It's quite the spread in terms of issues that we deal with as a parent. But they're fantastic. We get a chance to go to volleyball games and track meets and gymnastics meets and taekwondo and, parent day at the playground and everything in between. So we have fun.
And don't you feel that when you're watching, this comes from my experience, but I'm guessing you agree, when you're at one of your kids' events, whatever it is, you let everything else fade into the background, right?
Yes, maybe to a fault sometimes, because I'm told I can get animated in the crowd.
I bet you could. Yeah. Oh, but it's a really healthy release in a way for you too, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
To have that.
And we all parents know this kind of metamorphosis where you used to have your own name and you show up places and you're so-and-so's dad now.
Right,
and
right.
So that's fun to see them kind of step into their own, to see them step into their own opinions, to see them read something that dad's doing in the newspaper and come home and give me the third degree about it. And so that's pretty amazing. I've got an incredible wife. Her name is Dr. Sakina Futrell Carter, she's practicing as a midwife, and
so she's extremely busy too.
She's extremely busy, and I'll tell you, she puts my work into context, because I come home some day frustrated because I had a stressful budget meeting, and her work is births and miscarriages and everything in between, caring for people at some of their most vulnerable moments. So I'm really proud of her work as well.
Yeah. A very different kind of issue, but brings it home, doesn't it?
But also very relevant, because the families that she served have all kinds of real life scenarios and real life situations that give them either ease or an incredible amount of anxiety and trepidation about the world that they're bringing their child into. And she ends up having to care for them on a one-to-one basis. So we see ourselves as kind of bookends.
Yeah. Is it hard, though, to give each other enough time when you've got the kids and each of your careers going full steam ahead?
It is if we we've started to figure out, if we wait for a good time to do this or wait for a good time to go on a date night.
Or when you're not
it'll,
tired.
It'll never come. So we've just learned how to
Schedule it.
how to put it on the calendar first and how to make sure that we're dedicating that time to one another. And it probably goes in cycles. There's moments where we do better and worse.
Sure.
But she's pretty great.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute.
And in that minute, tell me why you think your leadership skills fit your job.
Because we listen to people. Because this is about, I've just gotten to know this city really well. A mentor of mine, when I got elected mayor, said, listen, there's no one person, you included, me included, who knows everything you need to know to run this city. He said, but the good news is there are over 300,000 people who collectively know everything that you need to know to run this city. And we've had a blast just trying to listen to the pulse and go on this journey with our community.
Well, on that really neat note, let's say goodbye to you folks. I get to talk to them a little bit more. Thank you so much for coming over and talking with all of us about
Thank you for having me on. I
your
enjoyed
life.
the discussion.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week. Till then, have a good week.